Hello. So this is a rather different video angle than I usually do. The window is behind me, as you can probably tell, and it doesn't do the camera any favors. It doesn't do the angle any favors. Hi, flag. Woo! And I can see from this video that I'm still like hideously skinny, and also my hair is gross, but what am I supposed to do? I mean, I'm eating fairly normally, as I can tell. I'm eating as well as I can at this point. So yeah, that's really about the gist of it. This video, actually, I'm making it because I wanted to talk about a particular topic, that being self-injury. Okay, so distracted. Self-injury. Now, I was watching, the beginnings of a documentary called Cut Up Kids. And I was really finding that as I was watching it, it was kind of like, oh, that was me, that was me, that was me. It sort of still is me, I guess, but not really. I started self-harming when I was 15. As many of you watching probably know, self-harm can encompass a whole variety of things. Cutting, burning, bruising, punching things, kicking with your bare feet, kicking walls, kicking whatever would hurt. Some people do stuff as crazy as break their own bones. There's like categories for what they call superficial self-mutilation, which is like all that stuff aside from like the breaking bones and stuff, which is considered like more major self-injury, and the kind of major self-injury doesn't usually happen unless a person is, I don't know, psychotic, or they have a really, really bad mental disability, and they also have some kind of issue. So mostly what self-harm means to most people is the more superficial type. That's not to imply that self-harm is at all superficial, because it certainly is not. And there are two major ways people usually self-harm. For two major reasons, that's what I meant to say. Number one, which is the reason I used to self-harm. I say used to, but there could come a day when I do it again. It's not something that just stays away forever. You can relapse into it without even really knowing what you're doing sometimes, or you do know what you're doing and you just don't care. But anyway, maybe I'll talk a little bit about that later. But as I was saying, the first reason people usually self-harm is to get feelings out. This is if you have particularly intense feelings, almost always negative ones. I don't think most people cut when they're like really, really happy or really excited or whatever. I used to get what I call dysphoria. Dysphoria is kind of an umbrella term for all sorts of negative emotions that kind of mix up inside you, and you don't really know what they are specifically. But you just feel like this big ball of horrible, awful feeling, and you get so overwhelmed by it that all you want to do is get rid of it. And so for me, self-harm, mostly I just was cutting. I've experimented with, I've hit things before, and I've experimented with burning, but burning is not something that I can normally do and tolerate. So it's almost always cutting. So if I would feel something really negative and overwhelming, I would cut. And I guess, they say about endorphins, and endorphins, being a pleasure sort of chemical that goes through you when you're injured. And so that's potentially part of the reason why self-harm offers relief when you're feeling horrible feelings. And I don't know. All I know is that it worked. The other reason people self-harm is because of a lack of feeling. They feel numb, they feel empty, they are dissociated or something, they want to feel something. And causing themselves pain makes them feel something. So those are two major reasons. I've only self-harmed for like emptiness or rather boredom, like once or twice. At least once. One of those was the time I ended up in the hospital. That's another issue that this documentary tackles, is people ending up in the hospital for self-injury. Usually if I ended up in the hospital, it wasn't actually like directly because of a cut. It was because of general other issues. Like I had overdosed with the intent of killing myself, or I wanted to kill myself, or whatever. But there were 3 times that I did have to get admitted because of actual wounds. And okay, just for trigger purposes, I'm going to say right now that I'm going to show you my arm that has the cuts, or rather now the scars, or that had the cuts that needed stitches. So, trigger warning, if you're sensitive to that, please don't watch further. But let me see if I can get a good camera angle of this. It's not all bright. It's very difficult. Okay, maybe this will do better. This being my arm now, all those, well, they would be horizontal to my perspective. All those cuts are just cuts that I did just because I was feeling bad. But there are a few where I have scars. It's impossible to see. I fucking hate this. Try to block out some of that light so you can see a little bit. Okay. I don't know. Let me do this. I thought you could see it. Fuck that. Anyway, there's 3 of them. They're very deep. Well, actually, no. The first one was wide, and well, they were all jagged. The first one was not deep, but so wide that I couldn't close it. So I had to go and I had to get stitches, which is what I'm assuming that they mean in this documentary by hospitalizations. People don't usually end up in hospital over 3 times in a year for anything other than ER visits, unless they're like super severely borderline. But even then, it's usually mostly like ER stuff, because I've been there. I don't know if I've had 30 hospitalizations in a year, but I've had a lot of hospitalizations in a year, and mostly I was in the ER or somewhere medical. But the second and third ones were deep. The third one, actually, I think the second one, I actually nicked an artery as well, but it didn't actually become an arterial bleed. The third one, when I got to the hospital and the triage nurse was taking off the bandage, it squirted. For anybody who doesn't know, or maybe isn't as informed about cutting yet because they haven't had a cut that bad, if you have an arterial bleed, it will squirt. Often you'll be able to see your heartbeat in a cut. If something starts to squirt, get yourself to the hospital immediately. Do not wait unless you're bandaging it up or putting pressure on it. Don't take off your pajamas and put on your clothes. Don't do anything. Call 911, get yourself to a hospital, whatever you need to do right away, because you can die within minutes from shock from an arterial bleed. But anyway, he only had it open for like a second, and he was like, "Whoa!" And I said, did that just squirt, And it didn't squirt when the doctor took the bandage off later, but he said it probably clotted up, and I'm thinking that's what happened with my second one. But anyway, I've only had three admissions for a cut? No, there was a 4th one way earlier, but they were deep, but they weren't big, so I just got glue on them. But these 3 that all happened last year, they all needed stitches. So I've self-harmed since I was 15, mostly for the reason of getting emotions out. I mean, it's been off and on over the years. it was at its worst, I think, when I was doing psychodynamic therapy with a therapist named Janet. Because what was happening was that all this stuff was coming out, like, that I had buried for so many years, or, refused to let myself think about, or just didn't talk about, or whatever. And I had absolutely no way to cope. No coping strategies, no nothing. It wasn't DBT, it was psychodynamic, as I said, very, talking about, like, your innermost, deepest shit, which was good because I needed to know about that stuff, and I needed, the stuff that I learned, the stuff that I needed to know, but at the same time I didn't know how to cope with it, so I was cutting basically every day at that point. I don't think I've cut so much before or since, in fact, because, well, it stopped working a couple of times, and when I was in that zone where I had the 3 cuts that needed stitches, it was very all or nothing. It was very, I have to have a cut that needs, like, medical attention from an ER, or, it's not good enough, and I'm just not even going to bother. So that could have gotten very bad very quickly had I let it escalate, but I did not, thankfully. I consider self-harm as something that I'm getting over. I can't remember really the last time that I did deliberately self-harm. It's been months, probably. The last time I was in for stitches was last year, I think. I'm almost positive of that. It's one of the very few things that I don't struggle with nearly as much as I once did. But it has been, well, almost 12 years, at least 11 and a half since I started. So it's been a long time. And, I started out with stupid stuff like pen tops. Like, you take off the pen cap, and there's that pointy part of the pen. I used to cut with that. And I know my first cuts didn't even draw blood. As the years moved along, I graduated to, razor blades, whatever. I never did get a scalpel or use a scalpel. I suppose I could have, but I was never really desperate enough because I guess I thought the razor blades were good enough, and, well, I did deep cuts anyway, so I didn't need to have anything else other than what I had, so I never bothered. But I guess I just wanted to put this out there, just for maybe anybody who doesn't know a lot about self-harm, or wasn't aware of my very long history, or I don't know, maybe just wanted somebody who understood, watch a video, they get it, whatever. So I guess I'm here to say that I do get it. I'm willing to talk about it to some degree. I do have to protect myself a little bit because I'm trying to be in recovery, not just from self-injury, but from a lot of other things. If you watch some of my older videos, or even some more recent ones that maybe weren't so positive, you'll understand the kind of stuff. The eating disorder is one thing, and the borderline personality disorders, where all of it comes from, so that's one of the major things. Well, the dysthymia is a separate issue, unfortunately. I had that really before I had the borderline, unless you count cutting, which can just be depression too. But, I just, if you're really, really suicidal, or, like, really going to be graphically triggering, like, I'm really sorry, but I can't deal with that right now. It's too much. It reinforces that negative thought cycle that I go through, which is like, I think about all the negative shit, and then my head starts to think about it more and more and more, and so I start kind of obsessing about it, and then I fall deep into my little pit of despair, and I think that the negative thing is the only thing in the world, and I just don't want that to even start, because once it starts, it's very bad, and it takes a long time to get out of. So, as Finnick O'Dare would say, for all you Hunger Games fans, it takes 10 times as long to put yourself together as it does to fall apart. So, that's very true, by the way. Self-injury recovery is not necessarily a short process at all. So if you're a few years in, 5 years in, even 10 or 15 years in, and you still haven't recovered, like, it's not a big deal. You can still recover. And, I'm at the 12-year mark and I'm still recovering, I think it'll be something I've always got to keep a tab on, because if the urge comes up in my head, it's going to have to be just like, no, you can't do that. That's an old urge and it's a bad urge. You can't follow through with that. And it might not be, something I deal with every moment of every day, but it doesn't bother me like every moment of every day, or even most days. But sometimes you'll still get that little nagging thing, in the back of your head. But once you kind of, like, the more you work on it, the less and less the thoughts get. Like, they go from obsessive to constant to most of the time to, maybe like half the time, and they will gradually decrease. It's not going to be something that gets fixed in a week or a month or maybe even a year, but it is something you can work on. And abstaining from the behaviors, like, I know a lot of professionals talk about that, and they go, oh, you're not recovered unless you abstain, and yada yada yada. Abstaining is very important, and I'm not going to deny that, because to deny that would be to speak a lie, and I'm not going to lie on here. But you got to keep in mind that the behavior is caused by a chain of thoughts, right? And this is kind of CBT. I don't like CBT. I hate CBT, actually. I prefer to think of it as DBT, because it is also part of DBT. And I think about it in terms of science as well, the brain's plasticity, the ability to unlearn things that are negative, and the ability to learn things that are good, or that we want. So we can unlearn self-harm and learn better ways of thinking and, I guess, of living. It's not, a matter of, go look at some pretty pictures and read this affirmation. It's going to go away in 2 seconds. Like, it's not like that. But read the book A Stroke of Insight if you're interested in this concept of being able to kind of change the way your own brain is wired, because that's basically what's at the heart of it. And that's basically what we all do, whether we take medications or go to therapy or whatever. It's just that we don't see the process, obviously, because it's going on in our brains. But read that book. You will understand. It's about someone who had a stroke, but she made a very miraculous recovery. It was a very serious stroke, but she's basically fully back to what she was, and she has this whole new take on life, and it's an amazing, amazing book. It changed a lot of things for me. So read that. If you want to talk, well, we can talk. Just not about super sugary stuff, Not about, I guess, really, really, really depressing stuff. Because, like I said, it just makes a train of thought that starts to get bad, and it's not good. To state the obvious. But anyway, this video, man, it's almost 20 minutes long. Holy shit, I talk like way too much. But this is my video, I guess, about self-injury that's half current. I know there are possibly other videos up about that. I don't know if it's just included in my ED videos of the past, or if I ever made explicit videos about the self-harm. But I guess if there's something you want to ask me, whatever, go ahead. I don't have time for hate, so if you hate, I block hate. But seriously, no haters, because I will chew you out and then I will block you, because I get angry very easily, and I will very happily take it out on somebody who's being an idiot to me. Sad fact of my life. Okay, I guess this is done, so goodbye, and I hope I don't drive.